I really hope this is working today. I know we had trouble last week with tech, and this week my internet is having a big problem. So I'm really hoping we're going live because I've got some exciting stuff to talk about. So hopefully you're here. If you can see me, please say hello somewhere so I can know that this thing is working, because I think we're recording and I think we're live. So hello to all you that are out there. Great to see you. So glad that you're here. Sorry, but again, like last week, we didn't stream live into Facebook as usual. Not because I knew that, but because afterwards I figured it out. So we uploaded the video last week. So it's in there and you should be able to connect with that. So sorry about that if we missed you, because I know we always have people like Peggy and Tanya who are watching afterwards on replay. And I appreciate you guys very much for doing so. If you're here today and you're live, say hello in the chat. Be sure that you talk about mistakes today. Say mistake in the chat. If you're someone that makes mistakes like me, put it in the chat. And if you're here on replay, do hashtag replay. Let us know that you're here. And mistakes, let us know that you're listening. My name is Renee Schulte, and I am a clinician by trade. I am a reformed workaholic and a recovering politician. I used to work in policy at the State House as a legislator, and now I've moved into policy. And if you're with us in this group, you are a person that cares about policy too, whether that's your own personal healthy policy or boundaries that we sometimes call it, or if you're about changing things in the in the workplace, or on the Hill. And if that's something that you're interested in, this is the place for you. And I'm so glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Today ends our 4 mistakes that are leading right into our policy party. Can you believe the party starts next week? Policies party starts on Monday at noon right here. Be here live and in person with us next week. We're excited that you're going to be joining us. We are going to have a policy party right here for everybody, and we can't wait to tell you more about it at the end of today. But to recap where we've been so far, we've been talking about the personal policies or the boundaries that we lack in our own lives and the mistakes that we make and what that looks like. And there's 4 of them that we've talked about. And today we're going to cover number 4. But the first one is we try to change everything all at once. We talk about that person that always goes into New Year's, a new year, new me, change 10 things, go. And by February 3rd, you're like, maybe not, right? And so we need to change one thing at a time, and setting priorities is a big part of that, right? Number 2, we talk about believing everything we think. And sometimes we cannot believe everything we think. Sometimes we tell our stuff that is just not true. And we talked about how do you figure out if something that you believe is fact or if it's fiction, and maybe it could be changed. That was week number 2. And then last week, we talked about not asking for help. And I just got done talking at a keynote with honor students last week from the Midwest. They're from all sorts of private and public colleges around the Midwest. And one thing that we all had in common, not very good at asking for help. We want to do it all ourselves because we know the right answers. And I've gotten old enough to know that that's not true. The best thing we can do is to ask for help. And we talked about that a little bit last week. And again, we had a tech issue, so sorry about that, but it now is posted online if you would like to get a hold of that. It's a really good one. You should see. We talked about 3 different groups of people that you might want to reach out to for help: the empathizers, the mentors, or the professionals. And sometimes we forget about those other groups and think we have to pay for everything. And actually we don't. And today we're going to talk about the 4th mistake that leads into our policy party next week. And this is the story we tell ourselves. And this is kind of like those fact or fiction thoughts, but it's bigger than that. It's about the thing that you want to change. The thing that you want to change, there's a story that you tell yourself. And we're going to talk about that today because you can change your story, and changing your story will change your life. So let's talk about that. So today we're going to talk about number 4. If you are here with me now, type story. Let me know that you're here. Say story in the chat. Love to know you're with us. I want to say hi to Lisa. I think I saw her pop on. Hello, Lisa. So say story in the chat. You're going to follow along with us today. And so we're going to be talking about a story. So maybe by now you've thought of one thing, right? We probably thought of 10. But what's one thing we want to change in our lives? And maybe it's your health. Maybe it's their bedtime. Maybe it is your diet. Maybe it is a relationship with somebody else. One thing, right? And then there's a story in your head about changing that thing, whether you've thought about this or not, but there's a story. So let's think about this for a second and brainstorm some of those things that you might be thinking about in your head. So what are those things that are, when you're thinking about, okay, there's this story going on in my head, what is going on? And that story might be the thing that keeps you from success. Bob Proctor always says, what you think about, you bring about. And if you're thinking about the problem with the story, then more than likely, you're not going to find that solution you're looking for. So let's think about this. Maybe you've identified a key thing that needs to change at home. And maybe it's like you see it as potential for momentum, that you pick that one thing that if you just change this one thing, lots of things could get better at home. But maybe your head starts to say things like, I just can't do it. That'll never work. I'll never be able to maintain that, or whatever and whatever. And it goes on and on and on. Just me? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We learned in a book called Mind Your Mindset by Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller that they talk about a concept of identifying this story and that you're telling yourself about the things you want to change. And you need to interrogate it to find out what part is real and what part is not real. It seems simple enough, right? So we're going to talk about the three parts to this, looking at a story, and then we're going to walk through an example, because I know sometimes examples can get easier. But first thing that you do, you think about and you identify the story. So let's go along for the ride. We're going to talk about an example with this, okay? So say you decided you need to lose 20 pounds, or maybe your doctor decided it for you, and you're going to lose 20 pounds. But there's a story that goes with that, right? I know the story in my head sometimes is, I've tried this before and it fails. That never works. Blah, 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 whatever that story is, figure it out. And the facts may be you weigh 20 pounds more than you need to. Heck, the fact could be you could weigh a whole lot more than you should need to, right? So there's facts part of this story. And facts could be that things you've tried before failed. And that's the fact, right? Certain types of programming doesn't work for certain people. And maybe you tried a weight loss program that might have worked for the minute, but then you gained it all back, or it didn't work at all and it messed up your sleep, right? All of that stuff. But what is it you're telling yourself? And you should identify it and write it all down. And so maybe you're telling yourself it's going to be easy to do this 20-pound loss. Maybe you're telling yourself it's going to be hard. Maybe you're telling yourself you've done it before, and so you can do it again. Or maybe you're telling yourself, this is impossible. I've never been able to do this, right? So whatever it is, write all of that out. Don't just edit it as you go. Just write it all out. Then the second step is you have to interrogate the story. Now, there's a bunch of steps in this, and we're going to kind of walk through them, and I'll try to walk through them slow, but there's about 6 steps, 6 different things to think about when you're interrogating. Interrogating just means asking good questions. So we're going to talk about 6 different types of questions, right? So first is you're identifying those facts. What is real about the story that you tell, right? Then maybe, like we said, maybe the real is you really do need to lose weight. Maybe it is that you have failed before, or maybe it is you found something that was partially helpful and then it wasn't helpful, or whatever those things are that are true, right? And those things are usually verifiable. They're objective. Are certain. So, stepping on a scale and a weight is objective. We don't always like to use that. And some people say that's not the right one to use. Fine. Maybe it's measurements. Maybe you weighed your waist maybe you measured your waist, the amount of girth, if you will. And that's an objective measure, right? So you're thinking about weight loss or change of diet, change of habits, right? You can weigh or challenge things, right? You can chart how much food you ate before versus after, or how many vegetables you ate before versus after, right? There's lots of things you can do on this path. Not saying they all work, don't get you there, but figure out the facts of what you're trying to do. Then you're going to think about the assumptions that you make. And assumptions are kind of these things, interpretations, where X means Y. Because I'm over 50, I can't lose weight. That's an assumption, right? Or causation, X causes Y. Because my hormones are messed up, I can't lose weight. Or because I don't sleep at night, I can't lose weight. Or whatever, right? There's things that we make cause. Because of this, this happens. And then there's things that are called universalities, that X, the X always happens. I can never get below 5 pounds, because if I ever get below 5 pounds, I gain it all back. Something like that. So that's the second piece. So you've identified the facts, then you walk through those assumptions. What are the assumptions you're making in your story? That it's about weight, that could be a lot of things, right? We just covered a few. So what are the things you're saying to yourself about that? Now, number 3, you would think, which past experiences inform your present story? So maybe what's happened before that you're thinking about that plays into now, or maybe you're telling yourself that, well, because I failed before, I'll fail again. Well, is that true? Does the past always repeat itself? No, it does not. And so again, start thinking through, okay, what from the past is kind of messing up your current thought process, and how may that not be totally true? Number 4, what's different this time? The context. So what's going on in your life now that may make you want to lose weight? Maybe a doctor has said something to you that you're seeing a result somewhere in blood work, or something is happening where I need to take care of this time, and I'm more determined than ever. Then maybe you're in a totally different spot than the last time you tried. Maybe last time it was just to get into a bathing suit to go on a vacation. And maybe the health scare is a bigger motivation, right? Or maybe the thing going to the vacation is the bigger motivation. I don't know. Some people, when they have their big reunions coming up, right, have a big motivation to do something. Just depends on how a person thinks. So what is the context around it? And then number 5, what do you want to be true in this situation? Do you want it to be true that you can't lose weight? Do you want it to be true that you could lose weight? Do you want it to be true that you'd be successful and keep it off? What are you looking for? Now, when you get to the last part here, number 6, what parts of these stories are factual? After you've looked through all of it, what's real? The facts part is real. A lot of this other stuff is our own opinions. Sometimes we've made a story around the context. Life is just too hard right now. There's too much going on. I can't possibly worry about my diet right now. I can't even eat at home. I don't have enough time, right? There could be this whole story about context. Or maybe you really want it to be true that you failed, so that you have to get on a medication to help with weight loss. Or maybe you're looking for a weight loss surgery, and so you want things to not be the way you want them so that you get what you need. Did I say that backward? You know what I'm talking about, right? So when you get to the end of this, you have to actually evaluate, what are you thinking? And then once you actually walk through all of that, you get to rebuild the story again. So after you do the hard work of figuring out what are you telling yourself that's not true, you get to create a new story and imagine what it could be. And telling yourself the truth. And telling yourself the truth may be exactly what you need to get this change or this policy moving forward in your own personal life. So let's think about another idea. So what if you need to set a bedtime for yourself, and you keep going to bed later and later and later, and you're not getting enough sleep because you still have to get up the same time each morning, and you're exhausted. And you're telling yourself, I need to change this time. But the story goes, well, I really want to change this time, but my husband really likes it when I stay up with him late to watch this particular show, and he will be upset with me if I go to bed early, and I will miss out on, talking to my friend who can only chat with me at such and such time of night. And, if I go to bed early, whatever, right? There's this whole story that goes with. Well, the fact of the situation is, if you go to bed early, even if you wake up at the same time every morning, you're going to get more sleep. That's a fact. And if you go to bed early, you might have a better chance of getting more hours of sleep, right? That can also be a fact if you measure that out, right? But then you start thinking about, what are the assumptions? Are the assumptions that your husband always wants to sit down and have watch television with you? Or is the assumption that you're, staying up late with him is what's causing you to not get enough hours of sleep? What are those assumptions, right? And then you keep thinking through, like, after you've thought of the facts and you looked at the assumptions, then you go past experiences. Well, in the past, that's the only time we could really connect. That's the only time my friend was available. But if you call her, she might be like, you know what, this is actually a little late for me. I'd rather you call me at 7 and move the time up, right? Just because you've always done it one way doesn't mean it always has to be that way. So you start walking through the process of what past experiences inform your present story. I've never been able to go to bed early. I just can't keep it up. Well, does that mean you can't start today and try? No. So what's different this time? Well, you really need more sleep because you're getting sick more often. And your doctor said if you had more sleep, you wouldn't get sick. Is that motivation enough to make a difference this time? Maybe. And what do you want to be true? I want to be true that I could go to bed early and get 7-8 hours of sleep a night. That's what I want to be true. So then you start thinking and put all of that together. So you get to the end, we look at this and say, okay, what is this new story I can tell myself? Well, let's look at the first one, talking about weight. Okay. Facts, 20 pounds overweight. Fact, it's impacting my sleep at night. Fact, it's uncomfortable because my clothes don't fit, or whatever those facts are. But then you start thinking, I can't do this ever again, all those things, right? And instead of thinking that, maybe say, okay, it's been hard for me in the past to do this, but with this new strategy of blank, I can be successful, right? So you've come up with a new strategy for the goal. And the new strategy, you could be successful. If it's something you haven't failed at before, you could say, I can do that. I've done that. Or this is maybe new, and maybe I can do it right. Or you could say, I tried X before and it worked for a while until blank. So I'm going to try that again to be successful. And then where it went awry, I'm going to change it to be more positive and make an impact and move forward. So see, that can be helpful. So you just change the story so that when you start telling yourself in your own mind that you can't do something, you start changing it to what, you know what, that didn't work before, but this time with this strategy, I know it will. And making it a new story. The same with the sleep example. It's like, I know I haven't been able to stay asleep in the past, but I know that if I do this and put on a face mask and I tell my spouse that I'm going to turn off television at 9 o'clock and he can watch TV from after that or whatever time that is. He can have the TV to himself, blah, blah, blah. You set yourself up to be like, I think I can change it this time. So instead of saying, so I will never be able to get 8 hours of sleep, you turn that into, I can get 8 hours of sleep. If I go to bed by this time, I can go to bed by this time by doing these following things, and put that yourself in a positive mindset to be able to make yourself successful. The work that you do just working on the story is most of the work that needs to happen just to be successful in the goal. Telling yourself that you can do it is the biggest key to making you be successful. And so why not? If you have a story that you'd like to share with us about something, that story that you've had in your own head and that you've changed, put story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And next week, don't forget, the policy party is starting. And we're going to talk about how all these mistakes that we make, making public policy and personal policies, how all of that we can change. In the end, helping ourselves get a better message for ourselves and for our community. I can't wait to see you then. Have a great